Hey, welcome to InFocus Recouched. It's awesome you could join us for a great session of highlights from the InFocus archives.
Oh yeah, we've got some great content for you today. Sue Rad will tell us how to eat a high-fat diet but still have low cholesterol. Oh, yes please. We'll meet an accomplished scientist who says evolution is impossible. And we'll hear from a Christian pastor who lived through the horrors of Cambodia's killing fields, but is now making an incredibly positive contribution to his country.
Wow, it's going to be great. But first though, look out parents, Dr. James Wright has some tips on helping your kids stay healthy.
Let me just ask you this. We hear a lot about childhood obesity today. And how much exercise really should kids be getting?
Yeah.
Is it more than adults? Is it less? And what kind of exercise should they be getting?
Well, it's a good question. And matter of fact, just a few days ago, the British Medical Journal took the matter up and it gave advice to all medical officers in Britain, including blokes involved in going around to schools and so forth. And they say that kids, majority of children get far too little exercise. Wow. And they actually put it down in figures. Sure. They say that the new study says that children under 5 should be physically active 3 hours a day.
3 hours?
3 hours a day to stay healthy. Those aged 5 to 18 need at least 1 hour a day. Okay. And they also say that currently less than 30% of kids are getting that amount of exercise.
Well, I guess a lot of kids are playing. They're playing video games. They're on computers. And I guess a lot of kids are confined too because they're at daycares and what have you. Maybe they're not getting enough.
Not getting enough. That's what it says. Now, of course, that means that if the less exercise, the less healthy they're going to be, the greater the tendency to become obese as kids, so it keeps on getting worse and worse and worse. Obesity goes into the teenage years and adulthood, and they hit the wall prematurely. So what we are learning from this August magazine, who gives advice to all doctors who bother to read it, and they all should be reading it, not today, but a lot of them should be, is more exercise in childhood, right from the time they can start to crawl. More exercise, more exercise, more exercise. And as adults, we should be taking half our exercise per day. Half our walk per day is the ideal. We've been saying that for years and years and years. Less risk of premature death, obesity, heart disease, cancer, all
the lifestyle things.
Just a lifestyle, simple lifestyle modification that costs nothing.
So people want to get more information about this, where should they go?
Absolutely. Go to our website, docwright.com.au, type in your symptom, click, and up she comes. So there it is, every day of the week. Hope you look at it. Love you all. Goodbye.
Man, it's so important to get those healthy habits into place early, isn't it?
Yeah, and most kids are naturally energetic. Half the time we're trying to tell them to quiet down so they'll be good. But I don't think we should be doing that. You know, we've got to help them channel that energy.
But unfortunately, Dora, that means we have to get up off the couch, to play with them. That's the hard part.
Yes, kids learn from example, not just by telling them.
Wise words, Dora, wise words. Time for a break now. We'll be back in a sec.
We live our lives running around, rarely stopping to ask ourselves where we're going and what our final destination is. In the end, our lives become little more than routine. Step beyond and discover a path that offers comfort, love and hope.
Hi, welcome back. We're going to take a look now at an interview you did, Ken, with a pastor and church planter from Cambodia, Barnabas Mann.
Oh yeah, fantastic guy. Honestly, it was an honour to meet him. Let's take a look. In the 1970s, when the Khmer Rouge took over Cambodia, there were about 10,000 Christians in the country. But a few years later, by the time the Khmer Rouge had finished, there were only 200 left. And one of those is here today with us this morning, Pastor Barnabas Mann. Welcome.
Thank you.
That's a very depressing way to begin an interview, isn't it? But it was a very depressing time for you personally and for your country's history.
Yes, but depression never ends in depression. It will end in something wonderful. If we know that the Lord is at work.
Yes, yeah. You were personally sort of imprisoned in the killing fields, weren't you? In a labour camp there.
Yeah, I was in a detention camp at the eastern part, near the Vietnamese border.
I mean, you're alive today, and a lot of people aren't. How many people did die during that killing fields period?
1.7 million Cambodian died in the killing field. And in my prison, out of 300, only 127 survived.
Wow. So less than half.
Less than half.
Wow. So how was it that you were one of the ones who survived? What was it? Good luck, strategy, divine leading? What?
It was the divine protection, the divine leading, because I sensed that the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of the Lord Jesus Christ, was so close to me. Because in a place where there were no pastors, no elders, no other Christian to talk to, God was the only person that I could rely on. So He led me.
This was a pretty tough time to be a Christian in Cambodia. In the late 60s and early 70s, communism was becoming much more, popular. And you actually, because you were brought up a Buddhist originally, but you actually became a communist and an atheist.
Yes, so for me, there were two conversions. First, my conversion from Buddhism to communism. Then in April 1972, the second conversion from communism to Christianity. So I was born again in April 1972.
How did that happen? Just tell us.
I was assigned to spy on a gospel rally in Phnom Penh, the capital city. The speaker was the late Dr. Stanley Mooneyham of World Vision. Then, as I heard the story of the prodigal son, so God just touched my heart, and then I saw myself that I was that wayward son. Then I accepted Jesus, I ended up in trusting Christ as my Lord and Savior.
So you turn up to this evangelistic meeting to spy.
Sure.
And God just turns your heart.
Yeah, He turned
180
my heart, He
degrees.
turned my way around.
That must have been a shock for you and for your family and for your friends and for the communist groups you were involved with.
Yes, the communists were not happy. My life was wanted, but my communist mentor, the one that recruited me, decided to release me. But he paid the price. He paid the cost. He got arrested.
Okay. Now, you weren't actually associated with the Khmer Rouge group of communists, were you? It was a different group?
There were different groups, The group that I associated with was the group that meant just good for the nation. They would never ban the education, no the media, no the banking system. They just wanted a society with equality and dignity. People are respected. But they were the first to be, assassinated by Pol Pot.
It's often what happens, unfortunately, that it's the most ruthless groups that gain power, and that's what happened here.
Yeah.
Can you just try to explain to us, because I've certainly found it really hard to understand, and I imagine some of our viewers will find it too. What was the Khmer Rouge trying to achieve in Cambodia that they thought killing 1.4 million people would actually make the country a better place?
They believed that only a country of the peasants that would be a pure and a pure communist society. So they try to create that society of peasants.
So people like you, we wear glasses because we're older men now.
Yeah.
We would be suspect under that regime. Anyone with glasses was assumed to be educated and...
Yeah, my best friend ever, the one who was my church musician, he got killed because he wore glasses. Wow. He was suspected of being an intellectual, an educated person.
And even someone, you explain in your book here, Church Behind the Wire, that even someone with a name that is longer than one syllable was also considered suspect.
They considered those that belong to the rich family, belong to their arch enemy, the capitalists. So to become revolutionary, you got to chop as many syllables as your name down. So I chopped my name from Suvan to Van.
Yeah, that was it.
It became monosyllabic.
But you became known as Barnabas, which is the name you go by now. How did that happen?
I started to write songs of praise and worship in Cambodian style, so that the new Cambodian church at the Thai border and the refugee camp could enjoy singing them. Then a missionary in Bangkok they decided to communicate with me with this name Barnabas, for fear that all the men would fall into the hands of the police.
Oh, so then, this was a secret name for you to... Okay.
And then it became my official name because my family fled to Thailand in 1985. We got to register with the United Nations. So it became official in 1985.
Yeah. This is a really fascinating part of your ministry for me, that you have actually participated in the cultural rebuilding of Cambodia through preserving those old folk tunes and folk instruments, but using those to compose gospel songs.
Not just the gospel song, but also all the parables on Jesus now are in the form of Cambodian folk tune. Everyone hears it, he sings it. Yeah.
And even Buddhist-style chanting and things like that for the Lord's Prayer, I think.
Yes, the Lord's Prayer, more like that one, because we feel that it's not wise, it's not appropriate to play the guitar at the funeral service, you know.
Okay.
But to chant that one, it sounds so Cambodian. It is acceptable to the Cambodian culture.
So this is an important part of your ministry, isn't it, with Ambassadors for Christ, that you believe it's important for national ministries to reach their own people using locally indigenous appropriate methods. Yeah.
So I'm encouraged by, you know, the missions and of Ambassador for Christ to see nationals and ministries, so we have freedom to create and design any material that are culturally fit. We call it the contextualization of the gospel.
Wow. One thing I find really hard to understand, Barnabas, is that you escaped from Cambodia, like you said. You ended up in Thailand in a refugee camp, and you were there, and you were married, you had children. It was 8 years you were in that
8 years in Thailand.
8 years.
Yeah, I married Buri in 1980, and we fled to Thailand in 1985. Yeah. So it was a family of 5 members.
So you're there with a family of 5, like you say. Then you were there for 8 years while your girls grow up to young womanhood.
Sure.
And they don't remember their old country, and you had opportunities perhaps to go to Canada or America or Australia or Italy.
Yeah.
But you chose not to. You chose to go back to Cambodia. Why?
Actually, humanly speaking, we prefer either America or Canada. But somehow we made a mistake. I believe that this is a divine mistake.
Yes.
And now we thank God that because of that mistake that we decided to come back to Cambodia, God has opened more doors for us to minister to many parts of the world.
Wow. And you've planted, about 40 churches in Cambodia since then?
First, I started a church, and that church had about 40 daughter churches. But then God called me to be with Ambassador for Christ. Now I'm training church planters all over Cambodia, and even some Khmer-speaking people from Vietnam. And now in the last 15 years, there are more than 400 churches planted all over Cambodia.
Wow. Because people have this perception that, it's very hard to preach the gospel in Asian countries where it's traditionally Confucianist or Buddhist or Muslim, but it seems that you've found that people are quite receptive.
The key is, as long as our audience see that Christ is not an alien, Christ is not imported from outside, Christ is for them. Christ is identified as one of them, then they will accept the gospel.
Okay.
So my job is to make Christ known as he is for Asian people also, not just for the Westerners.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, living in Bible times was probably much closer to the way traditionally people live in Cambodia than how we live in the West. So,
a lot of culture in the Bible are Asian culture.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's an Oriental culture.
Yeah, Oriental culture.
That's fascinating. Now, I really enjoyed this book, Barnabas. If our viewers want to get hold of it, do you know where they can get hold of it in Australia?
Kurong Bookstore in Australia.
Kurong Bookstore.
Yeah.
And also, is it online?
It's online. E-book is online. Amazon. Just visit Amazon. You can order online, or you can get the e-book.
Okay. Kurong, Amazon. I personally recommend it because I've read it cover to cover. Found it very inspirational. And look, I find your story and your ministry very inspirational too. Thank you so much,
You're welcome.
Pastor Barnabas Mam, for your time.
Yeah.
Man, what is it with people who have been through absolute horror and can still smile like that and be so motivated to make a difference? I mean, whoa.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I get the sense, Dora, that, you know, God has done a lot of work in Barnabas's life and in his heart, done a lot of healing, really.
Yeah, a total transformation, I'd say.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Hey, we'll take a quick break now, but don't go away, because we've got more InFocus Recouched coming up straight after the break.
Onions add great sweetness and flavour and a good base to any curry. Going to add some ginger, some garlic. Look at that, nice and chunky. So we've got our spices, gives it kind of a Sri Lankan feel. Add some tomatoes, tomato paste, some honey. Roasted vegetables in these kind of dishes are always great. If we add some creaminess to it, and that dish is now finished, ready to hit the table. I recommend you to give it a try, and it's so easy.
Hi, welcome back. Now, I think a lot of us know that olive oil is good for us, but in this next segment, Sue Rad explains that not all olive oils are equal.
Olive oil, yum. Let's check it out.
Now, you brought us a whole bunch of different olive oils.
I did.
What's the deal with olive oil?
Olive oil is fabulous because it can help reduce your risk of breast cancer, colorectal cancer, dementia, and even help with blood sugar control. But the first interest in olive oil probably came around the 1960s when Dr. Ansel Keys did a very interesting study called the 7 Countries Study. And in that study, he showed that men living on the island Crete in Greece, whose diets were 40% fat, 40% of calories from fat, had about 1/40th of the risk of heart disease as compared to men living in Finland who also had high-fat diets. And they had a lower risk than even Japanese men who had low-fat diets.
Wow.
So there's been tremendous interest in olive oil and lots of research done on the product.
Well, now you've brought a whole bunch of different olive oils. And I noticed there are different colours, different locations
Lots for you
to
to taste and choose from. So let's start with the very weak-looking ones on that side there, the pale-looking ones, and they are sold, James, under the label of light or extra light. Tell us what you can taste there. Can you taste anything in specific, or does it just taste like vegetable oil? Yeah. And that's because light olive oil is just a highly processed, highly refined olive oil, which means it's been stripped of all its antioxidants. It's no lower in fat, no lower in calories, and in my opinion, basically a waste of money. You might as well not buy it.
So the light stuff, really...
Forget it. Get into the hardcore stuff, which is extra virgin. Lots of good extra virgin Australian olive oil, so you're going to taste that one next. And you see the colour is darker. The darker, the more intense the colour, the stronger the flavour, the more antioxidants you have. Extra virgin olive oil is not processed at a high heat. It's usually not heated. It's full of these antioxidants which give you the lovely flavour aroma.
It does. It's much more sort of flavour and very tasty.
Here's one that I brought just a couple of months ago from Sicily when I was over there. This is a beautiful olive oil from Mandranova Estate. This is a extra virgin olive oil that's been tested, and it has very high levels of antioxidants. You'll see the colour's much deeper. And have a good...
It's like a green colour.
Yeah, imbibe that, James. Tell us how the back of your throat feels when you let that trickle down. Can you sense any... Is there any sensation you can feel?
Oh, it's kind of like almost like a peppery burning.
Like a peppery, and that's exactly right. One of the key things that they're studying at the moment is called oleopurin. This is a very important antioxidant which has also anti-inflammatory properties, and they're very interested in it because a paper that was published in one of the most prestigious scientific journals in the world showed that in about 3 tablespoons of olive oil, that's extra virgin with oleopurin, you get the equivalent of, say, 10% of the adult dose for pain relief if you're taking something called ibuprofen. So if you consume olive oil, extra virgin olive oil regularly in your diet, you're actually helping to medicate your diet in a most delicious way to help keep those diseases at bay.
Well, thanks so much, Sue. Finally, some really great news, because I love olive oil, and this one is much tastier, and it's good for us.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now when we see the label that says cold pressed extra virgin olive oil, it'll make a bit more sense. Do you like olive oil, Dora?
Oh, yes, especially those, you know, the yummy varieties like the herb infused oil. So good. Especially when you dip bread into it and then dukkha.
Oh, yum, yes.
So good.
Hey, let's take a quick break now. We'll be back in a moment.
Planning your future can be a daunting task. What you want to do, who you want to be, and the road ahead can often be unpredictable. No one really knows what the future holds. Avondale. It's education designed for life.
Hey, welcome back. Now, if there's one thing about a Christian worldview that attracts controversy, it's the doubts that many Christians have about evolution.
Yeah, that is a big one. And in this next interview, we meet Dr. John Ashton, a scientist who has spent many years investigating this issue, and he's not shy in stating his conclusion, which is evolution is impossible.
And I'm here in the studio with Dr. John Ashton, who's an adjunct professor from Victoria University, specialising in biomedical sciences. Is that right, John?
Yes, that's one of the areas. Yes.
And also, John, you work in the area of food research, I understand.
Yes, that's right, particularly how food affects our nutrition and health.
But we're here today about quite a different issue, and that's a book you've written, Evolution Impossible. Now, this is, what, book number
14.
14 for you, so you're quite an enthusiastic writer, and this isn't the first one on the area of evolution, is it?
No. In 6 days, Why 50 Scientists Choose to Believe in Creation came out in 1999, and then there's been another 2 or 3 after that.
And look, it's a fairly thin book, but I've got to say I was surprised at how much content you managed to cover in here, all the way from sort of theoretical evolutionary stuff through to like chemistry and biology, you know, how a cell is made up, through to fossils and geology and the Big Bang and carbon dating and all in, I've got to say, not brushed over either, in fairly clear detail. How did you manage to do that?
The emphasis of the book is what we know today, and the book was written actually as a resource for students and anybody interested that links them to the scientific evidence that we have today. That
so students at university, for example, studying science?
In high school. Yes, it's hopefully aimed at that sort of level, to expand at that level, can understand the information that we now have where we can say that evolution is absolutely impossible. We now have that evidence available to us.
Now, if I open up a high school, I remember back to my high school biology textbook, John, and I think, okay, there's this story of moths, for example, which changed colour due to the smoke from a nearby factory. Or I remember pictures of embryos from all different sorts of animals, including humans, that showed that they're all pretty much the same and suggested, well, maybe we did all come from the same sort of origins. Embryos suggested it. Do you have answers in this book for some of those sort of basic things that we might have seen in high school textbooks?
Those issues that are often mentioned in textbooks are clearly addressed in the book.
What do you mean with the moths?
And the moths. And of course the moths is simply a case of the loss of genetic information that produces the light colour, but it's there as a dormant gene, and when the selection pressures from the predators is removed, then those genes began to dominate again. But this type of evolution is not the same evolution that produces new genetic code that would produce a new, more complex organism and the process of evolution. They're very different. A lot of people really don't understand that the examples that are given in textbooks of the type of evolution that we observe today is very different from the type of evolution that would produce a new type of animal.
You mentioned in your book, John, scientists who've basically tried to find a mutation that leads to positive new genetic information. I think that, what was it, bacteria? They tried to make bacteria mutate. I don't know if they zapped them with radiation or something to make them mutate, and to see if they could come up with some positive new results. How did they go with that?
Well, that's right. Lemsky and co-workers at Michigan State University bred E. coli bacteria through 30,000 generations, so it's still E. coli bacteria. There were some very minor changes that took place, such as they were now able to utilise citric acid as a food and so forth, but there was no substantial new code formed. There were slight changes to existing code, and this is very important for people to realise that there's actually no experimental or observational evidence of new substantial amounts of new code forming that could lead to the formation of a higher organism, and many people are not aware of that. All the changes that we observe and we see out there are simply small changes to the existing code in the form of the loss of information, which causes some fortuitous reaction, or the transfer of existing code from one organism to another. But for evolution to take place, we have to have massive amounts of new code form. This is new molecular structures on the DNA. There's no known mechanism whereby that can occur, and we know statistically it's impossible. It just doesn't happen. When we observe mutations, most of the mutations that we observe cause harm. And this is just a rule of science. Mutations damage the code. They cause diseases. Many of the diseases that we face today are caused by damage, mutations to the genetic code. And so what we observe is the direct opposite to evolution.
So, but given billions of years, though, John, you know, I mean, this is how the theory of evolution works. You know, small changes over billions of years, and here you go. It doesn't need to happen all at once. Surely billions of years is long enough for that to happen. Well,
we can do some simple maths on that. We know that about 100 to 200 million species have existed. The majority of these have evolved over, according to theory, yes, over the past 600 million years since the Cambrian. So we essentially should expect a totally new organism to have evolved every 6 years. Now that means all the intermediate steps every 6 years.
So in order for evolution, for all the species we have today, or that ever existed to be, in the time period that evolutionists give us, we need a new species once every 6 years.
Yes, and totally new species.
Clearly we're not seeing
developed.
that. So hence evolution impossible. Where can people get hold of this? Because there's so much more in depth there.
Well, the book's readily available on the online bookstores like Amazon or Booktopia, a book depository. It's also available from Coorong and from the Adventist book centres.
Thanks so much for your time today, John. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I kind of cut him off a bit there at the end, didn't I?
Yeah, but you know what? It's a massive issue, and there's no way you could cover it in a 7-minute interview.
Yeah, well, that's true, and I guess, you know, that's why I was, you know, waving the book around, because I'm not kidding. It's packed with so much evidence. It's totally readable for the layperson.
Awesome.
But it's backed up with full references from scientific journals. It's definitely worth a look if you're interested in the issue.
Nice. Well, we're out of time too, but don't forget you can very easily access all our previous episodes at the website record.net.au.
Check it out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on InFocus Recouched. God bless.